All right, friends, welcome to another session of Animal Speak, Empathy with Nature. And as is becoming the tradition, we're going to start this session with some music that is going to lead into a guided meditation. So we're going to have a few minutes of music and then about a 10-minute guided meditation. So I encourage you to relax, settle in, and enjoy first the musical journey and then the guided inner journey. Just releasing the stresses of the day. keep your eyes closed for this guided meditation, animal speak meditation. And being connected with your heart, the center of centers. Each breath just taking you a little bit deeper inside, deeper into the forest of your own being. And as we enter into the inner wilderness, connecting to a sense of safety in the forest, allowing your heart to be held with this sense of safety and feeling of trust. Trust that you'll be guided by the higher powers that keep and guard this inner forest. And trust you'll be guided in the best way for you, whatever is appropriate for you. And as you hold to this sense of trust and safety in the inner wilderness, just make your way forward into the forest, finding the path before you. The first thing to acknowledge is the earth beneath your feet. There's a solid ground to walk upon that supports your inner journey. Feel the support of the earth. And as you progress further in the forest, there's a large rock ahead. You see a large rock. And you move towards that rock. And when you get to the rock, you take a moment to touch the rock, and perhaps even bow or kneel at the rock if you wish. This is to acknowledge all of our stone ancestors that have gone before us, and upon whose shoulders we stand, our stone ancestors. Just take a moment in silence to whisper your gratitude to all stone ancestors. And then getting up, moving from the rock to continue your journey through the forest, continuing to feel that solidity of the earth, feeling the presence of the forest all around you, feel its covering above you. There's a distinct presence to the forest. And you can acknowledge this presence, the quality of space that it holds for you. And as you move forward in the forest, you see a certain tree up ahead that stands out. You keep that tree in your eye and you make your way towards it. This tree seems to stand as a representative of all trees and even all the plant kingdom. Your heart may even fill with gratitude for all the plant world that supports your life. You may approach this tree and wrap your arms around it. Spend a little time hugging the tree. It's a special feeling to wrap your arms around this tree, to press your heart and even your whole body against this tree. And the tree freely gives back of its good energy, which you can drink in and absorb as much as you desire. You can also release any negative energy or emotions you are holding, as the tree has the willingness and the power to take it and transform it, to recycle it back into nature's storehouse and flow. Spend another moment in silence, hugging the tree and enjoying this exchange of energy. And thanking the tree for the sacredness of this moment, releasing the hug, you continue along your way, this journey through the forest, your heart feeling even lighter than before and excited for this adventure. There's a levity in your step, so many wondrous things to see and feel as you move through the forest. You then come to a clearing in the forest, a place that for some reason there's no trees growing in a certain spot, and there's an opening in the canopy above. The ground below is covered with grass, so you can sit or lie down in this spot. And this allows you to look up at the sky. It's a clear sky, and you feel the depth of blue above. So blue, you can feel as if you can see right through to the other side, the other world. And as you remain still in the spot, looking up at the sky, some clouds start to drift into view. Big billowy clouds, reflecting light and levity. These big billowy clouds begin to fill the space above where you sit, filling the sky above your eyes. And as you gaze upward, you witness the clouds taking shape. Forms begin to emerge. And as they take shape, an animal emerges within the billowy clouds. This is quite astonishing to see this form coming into the clouds. Animal shape. Is it even an animal that we know on Earth? Or is it a sky animal? A spirit animal? With your sense of wonder, you look into the face of this animal in the clouds, looking closely at its face to shape the mood in the face. And you watch and you wait to see if the animal has something to say to you. Just listen to the sky animal, what words, what mood, what message it may convey. Just receiving what comes in the space, the qualities, anything to make note of that's significant to you. Receiving whatever comes in this openness in the sky, clouds passing through, perhaps with a message for you. Acknowledging it, receiving it with gratitude. And making a note of it so you can bring it back with you. So holding whatever came in the vision space. Clouds now past in the sky. You can now get up from where you've been on the ground to begin the journey back out through the forest on the return path. You again pass the tree you spent time hugging. Once again, feel in your heart the specialness of that exchange you had in that moment with the tree. And as you pass the tree, say thank you to the tree. And continuing along the path leading out of the forest back to where you started, you also see the rock that you passed along the way. And take a moment again to acknowledge it with gratitude for it being there as a marker on the path of your adventure. And as you pass it, you can once again touch it with a little tap of acknowledgement and appreciation to it and all the stone ancestors for their presence upon the earth. You might even sense how you've changed a little since you first passed the rock on the way in the forest. How there's a change in you from what you received in the vision quest. And then leaving the rock, coming closer to where you entered the forest, feeling yourself slowly come back to the outer realm, to the outer senses. Coming back to where you are sitting now, connecting to your breath, letting each breath bring you a little more back into your senses and outer awareness. Awareness of the room you're in. Coming back with a feeling of gratitude for this little inner adventure and all you received in it. And as you prepare to open your eyes, bringing the fruits of the inner journey, you'll have time to get your paper and some pencil crayons, something to draw with and journal with, to capture some of what you received in this inner journey. Thank you.
First off, I just want to say thank you. That was an awesome meditation. It wasn't just like the animals, but it was like the whole connection with the earth, like connecting into the rocks and just thinking about all the crystals, like how much they've like held space for me since, you know, I was like an early teenager, and just like their magicness. It was really beautiful. So when I came to the tree, it was like I realized that I was having moments of like I was another person. I was like, oh, I'm just like this like really big person. It was like I was a giant, and then I was like this little person, and then I realized it was like my inner child hugging. I think they're called like a weeping willow, and I was just hugging it, and like it was holding space for me, and I was able to like release like maybe some of these old wounds like from a child, and it was like a sense of innocence that it's okay, like I'm being held here. And then when the clouds came in, it was distorted, and then it came through as an eagle. And the message I got was, don't hold back, the best is yet to come. And,
Great.
that really spoke to me.
Eagle,
Let
with the
it
message,
unfold.
don't hold back, the best is yet to come.
Yeah. That was
Eagle
nice.
message medicine.
Mm,
Thank you, beautiful.
thank you.
Thank you everyone for sharing, giving us some experiences here. And yeah, moving ahead, I think I want to take a step back for a moment and ask the question, why? Why do this? We can ask this question because the modern mind, largely influenced by the growing ego, which is coming more and more into play through this rapid evolution of the left brain, wants to know why. And there's nothing wrong with this. The ego actually needs to be grown, not swept away, as some spiritual teachings teach. We're actually here to grow a strong and well-formed ego, which simply is the Latin word for I. And this ego I self is the part of us that asks the question, why? Why? It rightfully wants to know, because that's its nature. I remember as a young child when my ego was starting to peek through, how incessant I was in asking why to my mother, and returned everything that she asked of me, which drove her around the bend. And I can still picture her face hovering over mine, kind of like an angry bird cawing back at me in mockery. Why? 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 So may my mother rest in peace now. She no longer has to answer my incessant why. Thank you, Mother. I now have Google and Wikipedia to answer my why. And of course, other means of accessing knowledge, which is the point here. We're seeing that there are other ways to access knowledge. Yeah, so the two main reasons why we are exercising our ability to do these vision journeys is twofold. First of all, the content that comes through in these journeys builds up our inner life, right? So you all got some content that is now in you and builds up your inner life. It builds up meaning for your personal existence, which then can translate into your outer existence. This inner meaning that builds up can then translate into things in our outer life. And having this personal meaning is important because this is really what animates us. It animates our inner anima, or animus, as Carl Jung refers to it. The anima coming from the Latin word animale, which refers to this inner aspect we share with animals. We share an inner territory or soulscape with animals. How incredible that is. Of course, we obviously also share outer aspects with the animal world, some of them having almost 99% the same physical DNA as humans, which really should not come as any surprise, seeing how we all have our physical bodies from the same earth. So why wouldn't we have much of the same DNA in our outer form? But what we're interested in here is where our inner life overlaps with animals, because it is the inner life that animates the outer. And in this series, we are going to be looking at what is known as the spirit animal, something we meet inwardly in the soulscape, as opposed to meeting outwardly in the flesh, as you might in a literal forest. And this is where we can derive fresh content for our inner life, our soul life, with these inner encounters with spirit animal. So that's the first reason why we're doing this practice. And the second reason why, and why these sorts of excursions are actually very important for the evolution of humanity, is that by making them a part of our use of our mind, we build capacities of the mind, of our soul life. So we're building content and we're building capacities. We're exercising powers that may be dormant in our being and will remain dormant unless we, out of our free will, exercise them. Or perhaps we were fortunate enough to have them already activated from an upbringing or even an education that fostered these capacities, such as Waldorf education. And I mention this as a side note because I trained and taught as a Waldorf school teacher. Waldorf schools are sometimes referred to as Steiner schools because Rudolf Steiner was the one who started this alternative school movement back in the 1920s and still flourishes today, largely because of the refreshing way that they are alternative to the mainstream education. And the reason why Waldorf education is really revolutionary as an educational movement is because of the spiritual basis to the curriculum. And I say spiritual, not religious, because it's not a religious school. It doesn't teach any particular religion, but rather recognizes and acknowledges the universal spiritual nature of the human being. And so the curriculum serves the needs of the whole child, including the fostering of its imagination. Sometimes people think Waldorf schools are art schools, because if you ever visit one, you'll see there's a lot of art on the walls. But this is simply because artistic activity is interwoven into the integration of learning, which is why there is space here in this series to render artistically what you're receiving inwardly in your guided meditations. And why is artistic activity so important? Because it allows the power of the imagination to do its work, to go to work alongside the analytical and logical left brain. Which just brings us back to a central point in the first session. One of the most important things we need to do at this time in the Earth's evolution is to bring our spirituality and our science together. If we are really serious about understanding things not just in a self-serving, rapacious way, we need to use our full capacities in accessing content. We need to bring our scientific side and our shamanistic or spiritual powers together. And the only way to do that is to do that in ourselves individually. The individual is the only one who can bring these two sides together, the scientific capacities and the shamanistic or spiritual powers that we have. When we think science, think senses. Science accesses information through the senses. When we think spirit, we're talking about other means of accessing insight, using inner sight. And there is nothing unnatural about this. This approach is entirely in accord with nature. It's in accord with our own nature. And in fact, we are hardwired to do this. But we have to join the wiring together in ourselves, by ourselves, through our own freedom of will and activity. We can see in the development of human capacities how important the development of the imagination is. It is right there in the beginning of a child's cognitive awakening. the flourishing of imagination in the early years, or at least should be flourishing in the early years. Just like the body needs a mouth at the beginning so it can latch on to the breast right away to start feeding itself, likewise the imagination is primary for the human to feed itself from the spiritual source of nourishment. The young child lives and revels in the world of imagination. The intellect comes later in human development as an additional capacity, the ability to think logically, to reason, etc. We see this in the overall evolution of humanity. The imaginative capacities of the shamanistic mind preceded that of the scientific revolution and the age of reason and so forth. And now, the greatest threat to humanity is not what is going on in the outside, in the environment. Ultimately, the environment can take care of itself. It's what's going on in the inside, in the collective psyche of humanity, that is the greater threat and concern. Because it is what is going on the inside that is being reflected outwardly in the outer punishment the environment is taking. And most people don't get this important principle. It's what's inside that counts. It's what's going on inside. And that's where we're going first in our work here. In the next session, we will give space for our scientific side in looking at the outer form of animals and see what that reveals. In the first session, we open the question, what is an animal? But in this session, the question is, what is a spirit animal? And this question leads deeper into the realm of shamanism, which is something I've been deeply interested in since I did a journey into the Peruvian Amazon to drink the potent ayahuasca brew with a Shipibo shaman about 10 years ago. And following that, I did shamanic training with the respected Peruvian shaman Don Oscar Miro Casada, who started the Pachacuti Mesa tradition. And I really like the work of Don Oscar Miro Casada because he brings forward the teaching in a way that speaks to both the scientific mind and the shamanistic mind simultaneously, and is able to give a lot of answers to the question, why? 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 And so I referred to really a new form of shamanism, or what we could call a neo-shamanism, a hybrid form that works suitably for the modern mind. And this neo-shamanism, or newly formed shamanism, is important because of what Rudolf Steiner refers to as spiritual evolution. In Steiner's body of work, he makes a big deal out of the fact that there is a spiritual evolution taking place. And this stands in contrast to the material or Darwinian evolution we have all been taught as if it's settled science. But what Darwin presented, and he knew it, was only part of the picture, an incomplete picture, with lots of questions left unanswered, that really can only be resolved when we complete the picture with an understanding of spiritual evolution. And we'll get to this point later, but the relevant part that pertains to this idea of neo-shamanism is that there is an evolution of consciousness, that consciousness is evolving. And what we think is just matter evolving upward through a variety of animal forms being expressed in this Darwinian view of things is really a process of consciousness evolving down into matter, coming into form. The consciousness is coming into form, and then in some cases eventually going out of form. In this way, consciousness is like a great magician Consciousness makes things appear, and then things disappear in the realm of manifest form. And I will bring more of this later, this idea of evolving consciousness, bringing from a training I did on art history, which looked at art history as an illustration of the evolution of consciousness. When you look at the history of art, you can see how humanity has been evolving its consciousness through this interaction, interfacing with matter and expressing it in artistic form. Very, very interesting indeed. So now let's turn our focus a bit again to our own artistic activity. And at this time, not working with paper and crayons, but some inner artistic activity where we'll exercise the powers of mental picturing. Mental picturing, which is a component of the imagination. And this capacity for mental picturing is an important part of the shamanistic mindset, but is becoming like an endangered species itself due to our heavy reliance on images being made for us and spoon-fed to us through TV, movies, online videos, etc. With high tech, we have become a heavily visual society, but not in the way where we make the images for ourselves. It's at the point now where we need to be reading books again as a means to heal the mind and recover this lost capacity for mental picturing. So I'm going to take a bit of a middle path here in this exercise, and I'm going to share a series of images on the screen. These images are images of animals. So it's going to exercise your animagination in looking at these images and then closing your eyes and recreating them in your mind's eye to exercise the animagination. So yeah, just take some time to look at this picture, look at some of the details. Feel some of the qualities of it, because there's also a feeling component to these images. And then when you're ready, you can close your eyes and conjure up that image again. Trying to see it in as much detail as possible. Okay, we're going to move on now to another image. So let's take some time to enjoy, drink in the overall sense and details. And then when ready, closing the eyes and let the picture re-image in your mind's eye. And then we'll move on to another picture. Just drink that in, be with it. Note the details. And then again, when you're ready, close the eyes and reimagine it. This is an exercise for the will and concentration. As the mind drifts, just remember the image. And then we'll go on to one more image. Different quality again, different image. Feel it. There might even be a sound component for you. And then once more, closing the eyes, exercising that power of mental imaging. Might even be a sense of motion with this image on the inside. So we'll come back and see if anyone wants to share about that experience. How hard, how easy, how interesting, how boring it was. Yeah, before we go further and these sorts of encounters with spirit animals and power animals and such through this shamanistic side of our being, we need to give a little time to the scientific side, a little more context, so we can be comfortable with where things are going. And that's exactly the question to ask. Where are we going in these spirit animal encounters? So instead of just asking, what is a spirit animal? Let us ask, where is a spirit animal? Where is a spirit animal? And in a word, the astral world. The astral world. So what's the astral world? The answer to this will become clear really through experience, but one could say it is the world next to this world, the physical world, but paradoxically is also interwoven into this world. As I was saying earlier, one of the most important things we can do is blend our science and spirituality together, and in doing this, it requires we broaden our understanding of the world and what is reality beyond just a 3D conception of space, and really the whole 4D conception of space, including time. So these spirit animal excursions are making inroads into a realm beyond the usual boundaries of space and time, the astral world. In working with the shamanistic arts, we are learning to engage with what is known as twilight time. Twilight time refers to the time between the light of day and the dark of night. It is an in-between time. And so it is also an in-between space. Twilight time is an in-between time and space. And therefore it is a transitional space where transition can take place. Transition in us can take place. And the shamanistic traditions have long understood this and have been able to access this space. In the yogic traditions, it's known as Bindu Time. The word Bindu literally means spot or point. Bindu Time is a spot or point in time and space that is in between the waking state and the sleeping state. This is also referred to as the dream time in the indigenous traditions. And this is an important point to note. We are not going to sleep to have dreams, but rather staying awake while dreaming. You could call it waking dreaming, which is really an extension of what Carl Jung developed as active imagination. We are doing it while fully conscious and awake. We're not doing what Freud and Jung originally did. Freud and Jung would go on boat cruises together so they could sleep together, not sleeping together in the same cabin, but they would both go to sleep and have dreams and then come together and have conversations about their dreams. But as Jung split from Freud, he began to develop his technique to access this dream time while awake, which he called active imagination. And what is significant about this modality is that it not only greatly helped people to access unconscious material that was lurking about in the shadow corners of the mind, he found that the act of using the imagination itself was beneficial to his clients. Just exercising the imagination was beneficial and brought healing to his clients. So in doing this, we're bringing about healing, the needed healing to the modern mind, and to overcome some of the troubling aspects of mental illness that is rising concern on the planet. Because mental illness cannot simply be reduced to chemical imbalances in the body. There may be chemical imbalances. They may be due to diet or other chemical factors, or it may be due to improper management of the mind. It's a bit of a chicken and egg situation because the two go hand in hand, body and mind. The body affects the mind affects the body. And when it comes to the imagination, our society is suffering greatly. On the one hand, from an atrophying of the imagination, kind of a hardening, a stagnation of the capacity of the imagination. Because the imagination, when you become an adult, is mostly regarded as something used for inventing fictions and not useful for accessing hard data. On the other hand, sometimes the imagination is regarded as dangerous, something that can get out of control and can lead to all sorts of delusional states and lead to internal carnage. So in this work, here what we're doing in Animal Speak, Empathy with Nature, we are treading the middle path, a safe and central path that learns to take up this critically important aspects of the imagination. And so we should really be referring to this with a capital I imagination, which sets it in contrast to lowercase I imagination that's often associated with a child's ability to play make-believe and so forth. But this capital I imagination is the door. It's the door and the key to going beyond the confines of the senses-bound 4D realm and to move into the astral world. And in the astral world, there are actually layers or planes to the astral world. And these different planes have qualitative differences. And I like to use the analogy of a swimming pool, because as a kid I spent a lot of time swimming in the neighbor's swimming pool, and I would love to dive down to the bottom and sit there at the bottom looking up through the pool beyond the surface and up to see the sun up in the sky. Down at the bottom of the pool, things were always murkier because all the murk hangs out at the bottom of the pool, and so you can't see things so clearly down in the lower layers of the pool. But when you go closer up to the surface, things become clearer because you're closer to the light. So this is actually a good analogy for the astral planes, because lower down in the water is the lower astral stuff. And if you're in an ocean or open water, down at the bottom is where the bottom feeders hang out, where they, looking for easy meat they can pick off. So the things lower down in the lower astral planes usually refers to the more parasitical types of beings on the astral planes. Whereas in the higher astral planes, you're closer up to the light and actually to the surface, because the higher astral planes interface with the spiritual world, which is a whole other domain from the astral planes. And again, it's not necessarily stacked one on top of the other. They're all interwoven, but we can look at them in a linear way where, higher astral then connects to the spiritual world, the pure spiritual world. So, this is where we want to really set our intention when going on these journeys, is to navigate into the higher aspects of the astral world. So as we wind down the session, I want to introduce the importance of setting intentions in this work when seeking an animal spirit encounter. Setting intention is how we steer our way in astral space, and this allows us to avoid the murkier stuff of lower planes, or what was known in Greek times as encounters with the incubus and succubus. These are Greek words that refer to entities, non-embodied entities, non-human entities that feed off of human energies, such as the sexual energies of humans, in a parasitical way. There's also entities that feed off of emotions, such as fear and anxiety. So we need to set our intentions to keep out of those types of waters in the astral world, because there's a variety of things there, and in these spirit animal journeys we're looking to set our intention to connect with higher aspects, to get guidance for ourselves that will lead us on our evolution of consciousness. So in essence, we need to steer our way into higher astral planes for benevolent encounters. And sometimes this is thought of as sacred space, which we'll look at more in the next session. But for now, you can think of that space as, a special space that needs to be sought with special intention. And the word sacred actually means special intention, or quite literally means set apart. Something that is sacred is set apart. So we're sanctifying a space set apart from the rest of the space when we set an intention. And it has a different quality of feeling to it, a more elevated or heightened intention that you would get, say, different from going into a grocery store. We're seeking a heightened space with a heightened intention. So we'll look at that more going forward, because it is an important aspect of the work to stay in the safe and sound zone of things. But now we're going to wind down the session, wind down on this high note, and in a moment I'm going to give the Animal Speak assignments for the week, and then following that there will be a little break here, 5-minute break, and then followed by some optional music making, as we like to do afterwards with the people here in the loft. And for people out there on Zoom and Facebook Live, you're welcome to hang in and listen, to meditate, do some art, and be part of the party. For the Animal Speak assignment, the first one is pretty much what we did here a few moments ago, to look at animals. Take a look at an animal outdoors or in a book or even on the internet. Take a picture of the animal with your mind, like you're taking a snapshot. Then close your eyes and let that image of the animal develop in your mind, similar to like a Polaroid camera. This will give your imagination a daily walk, visualizing animals. And then after you do that, you're free to also draw them on paper with pencil crayons and crayons. And this will build the power of concentration for more power animal encounters in future sessions. The second one is practice setting positive intentions. For example, set your intentions before leaving your home that you will have positive encounters outside of your home. Set intentions in the space where you live, that it is a sacred space, space that is set apart from the disturbing craziness sometimes found in the world. Set positive intentions before going to sleep, that you will move into higher astral space during sleep and bring back from the twilight dream time good things in your soul to carry into the day. Even set sacred intentions before consuming food, that you may get the most benefit from the food, that the food has sacredness in it that you're taking into yourself. And then if you encounter difficult or dark times for whatever reason, you can connect back to the light of these high intentions that you've set. These are things that you're building up in your inner life, in your soul life, that you have stored there to be resources for yourself while navigating the inner outer realm of things. And then third, of course, the thing that I give every time as an assignment is the Rückschau, the German word for backward review. Take a few minutes each day to review the events of your day in reverse order. View yourself from an objective, higher perspective, going through your day backwards. What do you see? What are you shown? What do you learn about yourself? This is a way to strengthen many things, including mental picturing, your memory, empathy, and of course, self-knowledge. So these assignments will be posted on the Empathy with Nature webpage, which is on the powerforconsciousliving.com website. And that link is also in the email that's going out each week. If you want to be part of the email list, just send the email to the address on that website, which is connect@powerforconsciousliving.com. And that's it, except for one last thing. The Greek philosopher Plato recognized that in addition to breathing, eating, drinking, sleeping, and loving, every creature has an instinctual need to periodically leap up into the air for no other reason than because it feels so good. Similar to those pictures we looked at earlier, let's have everyone leap up into the air for no reason other than it feels so good. So good. See you in 5 minutes. Yay! Leaping
So
lizards.
Good.